Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Lead with Impact series. I want to welcome everyone to another Power Pack session of our Lead with Impact live series that we've been doing the last about 8 to 10 weeks. I am Grant McGaugh. If you're not familiar with me, I'm the CEO of 5-Star BDM, and today we have an incredible discussion lined up. And I want you to really sink into this because we have a question of the day. And that is, what's the number one skill that separates executives from managers? And many people think, as you're thinking through this, that it's about leadership or it's about vision or decision making. But here's the absolute truth. It's understanding the language of business. And today we are going to dive deep into why mastering financial fluency, strategy, and business decision-making is the key to advancing into executive leadership. And we couldn't have a better expert to guide us than LaTasha Barnes. Now, LaTasha is the former CFO of Orlando Health Bayfront Hospital, a strategic business leader, and a financial powerhouse. And she has helped organizations navigate multi-million-dollar decisions and now helps rising leaders understand how to speak the language of business so that they can advance their careers. And also joining me today is my co-anchor, the brilliant Dr. Ondreia Clarke, the CEO of Upscale EDU, who will add her expert perspective as we unpack these particular insights. So we want to make sure that this is an engaging conversation, and I want you to be able to use your comments. Go ahead and put your questions into the chat area and just ask yourself, like, what's the one financial or business concept that you've always wanted to understand better from the C-suite vision, right? Or as a leader. So you can drop that into the comments. Now, LaTasha is on speaker with me. We had an internet issue with her, so she can't be on camera with us live. But I guarantee you, she is with us and she's listening to everything that I'm talking about. So we're going to bring her up, and I'm going to ask her this very important question, right? Here's the question, LaTasha.
Okay.
Most professionals focus on leadership skills or people management and industry knowledge. I want to know, why is mastering business language the missing piece to leadership advancement?
Well, first, Grant and Ondreia, let me say thank you so much for having me on. And I'm looking forward to this conversation. So back to your question. And I'm so sorry that I am not on camera. Who knows what has happened, but I'm glad to be here. So, absolutely. Yeah, you're right. Executives tend to think only about, say, the people side when they consider what leadership is. But really, its core, a business is very multifaceted. So understanding all the facets of business language is absolutely critical. From my perspective, as a chief financial officer, executives also have to think about how money is managed. They have to think about the strategies of the organization, operational growth, etc. And then you also really want to think about what business risks are there in the industry, economically, internally, that really help to shape the business decisions that are made. So it's really multifaceted, and really getting to the basic level of financial understanding, I think, is truly critical in any executive's matriculation, any executive's professional growth. It's just truly critical.
This is important. I want to bring this over to Dr. Clarke, because you've been in this executive leadership role, in your current role that you have now, also in the past in corporate America. And what that LaTasha is saying about financial acumen and understanding the language of business, what's your input?
Well, On a personal level, I understand the importance of it because when I was in corporate America, as you know, my executive role was to develop and scale a national department at Mayo Clinic. However, whenever we received those yearly reports or even quarterly reports, I felt like it was a big proponent missing from that equation, and the time that I was in that position, they came back with, everybody's excited. Wow, Ondreia, your incremental revenue increase was over 460% of the work you've done. But no one actually took the time to tell me what that meant. How do they, curate these numbers, and what does that look like as far as forecasting? So I was a little bit confused on, okay, that common sense, that sounds like a great number, but I really wanted to know the crux of how did we get these numbers? How do we get these projections, and what are our future goals? Because that would help me more as a leader to know more financial targets and what we really needed to meet in that perspective. But now as a business owner, I get to see all of those numbers, all of those moving parts. So you get to see more of the big picture in real time, and you don't have so many missing pieces because the data, AKA the numbers, helps you make so many more important decisions moving forward and scaling any business, whether it's in corporate or in your own entity as a business owner.
That's so important. We're going to bring this
Grant,
back over.
If I could interject, if you don't mind.
Go right ahead.
You just made a really great point, Ondreia, about thinking of, I think a very key strategy to learning or developing that business acumen is really thinking about your role as you are the business leader, not just the expert in the specific role you lead. If you are looking at your role as a business owner of that unit, you're forced to really think holistically about what is driving performance, not only financial, but operational and growth.
Yes.
Man, you're hitting on all cylinders. And I want the audience to truly chime in. Somebody got the memo. I think that's Frank. He said Frank is in the building. So Frank is listening, Frank Bryant. So thank you for that, Frank. And, some of these key points are very, very important. We have to understand that executives don't just lead people. They manage the money, the strategy, the risk. And if we don't understand financials, P&Ls, ROI, we really can't play, or it'd be difficult to play at that executive level. So my question to LaTasha is, what was that one business skill that truly transformed your own career?
That's an excellent question. I tell this story all the time. My career has been really built in healthcare. I've been in healthcare for more than 25 years now, and executive leadership for about 12 now. And I believe the one crucial skill that I learned was to think beyond the financial statements. As the chief financial officer, that is my expertise. That's my role. That's my responsibility to make sure that we are all in the organization being good stewards of those funds, right? I'm looking for the RO, the return on investment. I'm looking for health in that balance sheet. I'm looking for a balanced approach to revenue and expenses. But what I learned is that I've got to also have an eye for operations. Yeah, I need to understand what's happening on that nursing unit. I need to understand from a labor perspective how resources are being utilized, what risks, like I mentioned before, what risks exist, what business risk is there to solid operational success, which then leads to margin. And so me being able to kind of play in that operation space to let my peers and my colleagues and those that really do the hard work in the hospital or healthcare setting, let them know I understand, or I seek to understand what their day looks like, how they make this stuff happen. That I think has propelled me more than anything, because it helps me to be influential with them when I need something from them. If they believe that I understand what they go through on a daily basis, that I understand how their work is so crucially important.
I think we need to hire LaTasha to be my CFO. If my CFOs thought like that, man, they were like, it's all about the money, it's all about the numbers. But you're understanding what's creating the numbers in the first place, and you know how to push those levers. Man, that's wonderful. That is wonderful. I want you, Dr. Clarke, what is your input?
I concur, and I think it was the inverse for me. As I said, I was more on that operation logistical side of it. So I know the systems, I know the process, I know, how to hire people and communicate with executives at various hospitals throughout the nation. But how does that translate on the business side? How does that translate financially? Because that gave me more of an understanding of where our mission really is going, right? So let's face it, without business acumen, you're going to hit a glass ceiling faster than you may think, right? So you can be the best at your craft, but if you don't understand the financial, strategic, and as LaTasha pointed out, the operational side of the industry, you're going to get stuck in middle management, right? And we always want to ascend higher, right? While others are moving up, you're going to find yourself like, why am I only with the middle management, right? So you have to learn how to speak multiple languages, right? So that's not only being fluid in the business acumen, but definitely in that operational space and the financial space. And then you can build on top of that. And that's what we're doing with Lead It with Impact. We're giving you those fundamental key financial terms, by business acumen terms that you need to use as a springboard so you can kind of break through, catapult through that glass ceiling of middle management so you can play on a different level, like you said, Grant. So you can use different levers to navigate your career in the direction that you deem for yourself in the future.
I think what you said is so important. When other people start to hear you speak in those terms, and they say, wow, she's not speaking from a managerial standpoint or director standpoint. She's speaking to me as a senior leader in how we look at things. Maybe we need to bring them in and give them a seat at the table because they understand what we're truly trying to accomplish and what we're talking about for the most part, right? I want to ask the audience, because this is important. This is when you're going to get something out of your time that you're spending with us. What is the one financial or business skill that you think leaders need to master? I want you to put that into the comments, right, as we go along, because we've got great leaders here that actually understand this at a high level. This is your opportunity to learn. So don't be shy. Put some things into the comments. And while we're waiting for that, I'm going to ask LaTasha this. Now, we're going to break down the business game, truly understand what leaders really need to know. Now, LaTasha, you have been there, right? You've been in these trenches, the top decisions that need to be made, especially at a hospital. So we want to make this as actionable as possible. So if someone wants to step into financial leadership thinking, where do you think they should start?
I think it'd be great if someone has access to that company information, or if it's a business unit and you've got access to your unit's financial information, pull down that profit and loss statement and just take a look at it. For one, you may not understand at all what it says, but at least you can familiarize yourself with what's on it. I don't think it'll be that much of a shocker once that leader can have the information in front of them. But don't be afraid to reach out to the financial leaders in that organization to help you walk through that information. I mean, you've got an entire finance and accounting department in almost every organization, every large organization. And so those folks would love to walk you through your information. There is nothing more, I think, value added than I, as a chief financial officer, or my team can do is ensure that our leaders understand their financials, because it helps to keep the mission's core up front, and it keeps valid data in front of that leader that helps them to better make decisions. But I would not be afraid to reach out to the financial leaders in your organization and say, hey, I would like to understand better what these statements are. How does this impact what I do? I think another key component would be, because actually out of that conversation, I think is where some of this language will be introduced. Like if you think about return on investment or an ROI, right? So that thinking in general is highly critical, but not every business leader or organizational leader beyond perhaps your executives even understand what ROI is, understands how that helps, building that business case to support the investment that's being sought, how you use that information to help your business leaders, one, make those decisions or be willing to make those decisions with you, or help you as the business leader to understand why it's important to do. So I wouldn't be shy with reaching out to those finance leaders and asking them to just help you understand what it says.
Now, this is important. I want to bring this over to Dr. Clarke, because now you're in the field, you're doing your operational duty. You already said, you pointed to, hey, you had a 400% increase in some of the production, as they alluded to. Did you feel comfortable going to the financial leaders and asking them these questions that LaTasha is alluding to?
And that's a great question. I think how my position was set up, I was still based in Washington, D.C. So I was, my home office was there in D.C. So reaching out to Rochester, that was kind of that distance there where Mayo Clinic was based. So not necessarily, because when I traveled up to Rochester, I'm bogged down with meetings all day, right? So I'm always at meetings and traveling. So I didn't make the time, to be honest, to really say, okay, financially, what does that incremental revenue increase really mean, right? So I'm a self-starter. I kind of did go do some research on my own, but I did feel like it was a barrier there. And that's where, what we do now with the training is to build that confidence up within yourself to, if you don't, as LaTasha said, know what an ROI is or other financial literacy terminology, then we want you to have that confidence to say, hey, could you break that, that terminology down to me just a little bit more, and ask extended questions of how does that align with operational decisions, and how does that financially impact the increase or the decrease of the business sustainability, so ask real questions that gives you a more holistic viewpoint on not just the finances, but try to throw in some of that business language in there, operational language in there, and you'll be surprised. You'll look at your entire department from a different lens if you do that.
I agree. So here's the challenge, and for our audience, this is a key takeaway. What's the key takeaway here is that the next time that you are in a leadership meeting, especially now we're going into a new month, it's going into March, right? And if you can start asking those types of questions, like what's the ROI on this decision, and see how the conversation changes, because now you're just not in that operational plane. Or if you're in technology, you're not just talking about the technical plane. You're starting to put yourself in a different light within the meeting, because now you're starting to ask financial questions and you're starting to ask business questions with around the implications of all these things. And that type of business skill will begin to set you apart. Now, I want to get a little tactical, I would say, not technical. We're going to get tactical. I want to ask this to LaTasha and Ondreia as well. So this is for LaTasha, right? And so if you had to put this into context, like what are the top 3 business skills that can make someone more promotable right now?
So speaking of the language of finance or financial operations, I find, finance is very technical, right? Accounting is very technical, but someone that's in a leadership position, if they really stepped back and if they've got a great business mind, like they understand the business, they're already thinking along the lines of what we're talking about. They just don't know what the words are. They may understand a return or a return on the investment without even knowing that it's called, ROI. So I just want to throw that in there. I think versus honing in too much on the technical aspects of what I know, because I am the expert, and from a financial perspective, it's if you took a step back, there's probably more that you know. You just aren't using the literal language that we're talking about. So that financial acumen, hopefully, is there. That would be the first thing I would say from a business skill. Financial acumen for sure. Understanding what those numbers mean, having a good grasp of your organization or your unit or your department's budget, and what are the ins and outs? Where is the revenue coming from? What expenses are going out? What are we using our dollars for? How are we using that margin that we're earning? I mean, these are highly educated folks. So as Ondreia was saying before, definitely be proactive in trying to understand that financial language, but reaching out when you don't quite think you have a great grasp of it. I would say the second thing is that strategic thinking. That really does up the game, in my opinion. Again, the technical side of things, it's always going to be there. But when you can have the strategic thought, critical thinking of where should we be headed as an organization? What should my unit be doing? What am I doing that's not really value added, and I could maybe dial back and shift here and pivot there? Like connecting those decisions that are made day to day to the long-term business impact, I think is really critical. And then I would say the third thing, and I mentioned this earlier, is that risk management, really understanding the level of uncertainty that impact your organization or your unit, your department, your responsibility. They're going to be internal and they're going to be external. And understanding those risks will help you make data-driven decisions as well, because you're going to seek to understand how those things really do impact the decisions that need to be made. Those would be my top three.
Those are good. I want to hear from Dr. Clarke. What do you think of those three things?
Well, I think LaTasha nailed it on all cylinders there, but I like to take a lot of personal approaches for myself of, receiving promotions every year and a half, 2 years at the most. And that's really being strategic about showing up in the position that you are in and looking beyond the position, right? So I'm big on visionary leadership, looking beyond the role, identifying the wants versus the needs, right? A lot of our peers and colleagues would tell us what they want, but if you're more observational in the needs, then you can fill in the gaps, right? So that's what I've always done throughout my career is I hear what you want and I'll make sure I appease to that, but then I identify the needs. What operations are missing? What systems and processes can make this more efficient as we're moving forward? So just having a keen awareness of different, like I said, the wants versus their needs, and really delving into the needs on a strategic level, and then actually the communication skills. How are you articulating that? How are you able to visually put a presentation together? Because that's what I did before, I stepped into more executive roles. I set my bosses down a lot of time and I said, okay, this is what we're doing. And then I showed them the vision of this is what we can be doing better, right? And so it had them to stimulate their thought. And then I brought them into the vision of how we can expand this, on an exponential pace from what we're doing operationally. So I'm really big in visionary leadership. Never go into a role and just do your job, because if you go into the role and you're only doing your job, then you've missed the job completely, right? So you always need to kind of identify the want versus the needs, because the needs is where the gaps are, and then build systems. I build on systems, peoples, and tools. Those are the frameworks I typically use. And I leverage those three frameworks for myself. And I typically build a big, nice strategic plan and mapping in those gaps with that.
I think first of all, that's a really good business skill set that you put together. And I can see how you use that to leverage to move forward. And people recognize it. It's about recognition, right? Recognizing like, hey, she understands. I want a part of my teams. I want her to improve our results, right?
Mm-hmm.
But this is a results-oriented business. No matter what you're in, they're looking at measuring. They're going to measure the results, right? So if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. That is usually the thing. Now, and I want to ask LaTasha this as well, because I think where people stumble is in this language world. Finance people, they speak in their own jargon. And unless you understand what that jargon truly means, and then you can begin to speak that back to quantifiable results, and then you're speaking their language. They're like, oh, you understand, the Spanish I just spoke. I didn't know you spoke Spanish, right? Just to give you an example, right? But then you can get more buy-in. What do you think about that, LaTasha?
You are so right. If you could see me, I have the biggest grin on my face because that is generally the challenge. I mean, personally, that is always my challenge in really trying to convey the financial message in a way that actually is understandable and being aware of the jargon we use and simplifying it, relating it to the day-to-day work that the audience may be engaged in, linking that jargon to something that is really connected to what they see on a day-to-day. That's generally how I try to approach it because you're right. It's speaking finance is only sexy to finance people. And you've got to really figure out the way to touch the audience. And it is about knowing who your audience is because I can speak fluently, technically, to most of the senior leaders I work with, and they know what I'm talking about. Or like a board, that can exist. But when you're getting down to say the emerging leader, you really got to understand how to break down the financial information to the base level that really relates to what they see. That's been my method.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's a great method. And before, we want to ask, we're getting toward the end. We've got a few minutes left. You're going to be coming for Lead with Impact in Miami. Let the audience know what you feel you're going to be able to bring to the table. These are people that are serious about mastering business fluency, how to speak that language. What are some things do you think, you can, if you share this a little bit behind the curtain, that they'll be able to gain and garner when you come to Miami?
My goal is to almost, you kind of led me with your previous question here. My goal is to take the stigma and the mystery out of financial information, really help the audience dig deep, break down the barriers that might exist to the lingo and the jargon that we use and really just make it simple. I want to talk a little bit more about, engaging in the operational side so that you can understand better what's behind the numbers. Perhaps, we can talk about, the health of an organization in a way that doesn't take it to the literal financial statements all the time. You don't need to know all the ratios on a balance sheet, not necessarily, but let's really hone it. Let's hone the knowledge sharing to the key elements that I think can be crucial in an emerging leader's trajectory as they move forward, and what's really the most critical bits of information that are needed. I think really breaking down the terms, breaking down, using some examples, some real world examples of from my profession, from my professional development of how simple learning financial information really can be and how it really impacts the growth trajectory of an organization, how it impacts the strategy, and really relating how business decisions are made when that business fluency is present.
I think that's well stated. We got just a few seconds here. Dr. Ondreia, Clarke, you got to tell us how they can sign up for Lead with Impact.
Yeah, as LaTasha and Grant said, this is a great opportunity to expand your business acumen, financial acumen, strategic, visionary leadership, and just surround yourself with individuals in the field that's done it and done it well. So you can definitely go to upskill.edu/events and go ahead and book your ticket. We have a limited amount of seats available, but in this exciting 2-day summit at Miami-Dade College at the medical campus, March 22nd to March 23rd, we will bring you in and have real world case studies. And real world case studies, I'll say this, Grant, I know we're wrapping up, but real world case studies meaning what are hot topics in the industry today? How do we make decisions with the political climate as we're navigating funding and things of that nature? How does that translate into departments? Why do hospitals close certain departments? Why do we have certain mergers? That's where LaTasha will give us that literacy, financial literacy, and terminology, so we can look at the big picture on all cylinders there. So March 22nd to March 23rd, go ahead and get your tickets today at upskill.edu/events, and we will see you in the boardroom.
Well, you have all heard it from both of them. We're talking about business fluency. We're talking about how to understand the language of business from a financial metric. This has been wonderful. Again, thank you both for being with us. We will be back next Friday with another important message. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.